Hi, guys. Welcome to another episode of The Big Shift. Now, imagine, guys, you're in prison with no way out for 22 years on death row, a place of solitary where there is no sound and you can't even speak. And you're waiting for them to come for that day where they're going to take you down the hall and the state is going to kill you. My next guest is going to tell you just what that is like. Guys, thanks for tuning in. I've got a wonderful guest next. He's got an unbelievable story of overcoming adversity. We have many playlists on The Big Shift, guys, as you know. Our next really important playlist we're going to put out there for your entertainment is Big Shift stories, just like my own, of people with fascinating journeys who have found the courage, the opportunity, the circumstance to overcome unbelievable adversity in their life. My next guest, ladies and gentlemen, spent 22 years on death row for a crime he didn't commit. We're going to go to that in a minute. Before we get there, I just want to thank everyone who's gone into the website at www.stephengillen.com, signed up to the subscription model, bought a copy of The Big Shift. You know, I've really gone in there to get all the help that you need as we come out of this time, guys, you know, and get the support that you need in your life and business and all that. It's a real joy for us. Now we're going to go back to this wonderful story, guys. I've really been looking forward to talking to this guy. He's got an unbelievable documentary called Fear of Number 13 on Netflix. Today, my special guest is Nick Yarris. Nick, thanks for coming on.
Hey guys, thanks for having me on. I really am grateful.
Look, it's a real pleasure to talk to you, Nick. It really is, because I had to sit for a minute. I mean, myself, you know, I've done over 20 years in high security prison, the real worst of the worst. People know a lot about my story. So I actually know what it's like to have to navigate a blackness, a darkness like that as a human being, to be pulled right down to the most primitive state. But I had to think, imagine actually being on death row for 22 years and for a crime you didn't commit. Now, I just want to ask you before we get into your unbelievable story, if you could sum that time up in one word, Nick, what would it be?
Growth.
Wow, I didn't expect that. So look, you come from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Tell us first about the day where you got arrested. We're going to go back and we're going to jump back and forth a little bit, but we're going to go straight into the raw content. On the day that you lost your freedom and was taken away to spend the next 22 years on death row for a crime you didn't commit, what happened on that day, Nick?
I was living in my parents' house in Philadelphia. I was 20 years old and I was wasted on methamphetamine again. I had only been home a few short months at this time of December of 1981 because I had just gotten out of jail for petty crimes. In and out, always getting locked up, always high on drugs, a total waste. My sister and I were fighting over a car, and I owed her some money and she wanted to take my car off me for payment. And I refused to give her the car, but then I had to give it up because my parents interceded and made me give the car up. So I went out that night partying and I got high and I was driving around the city of Chester about 2 o'clock in the morning when a police officer pulled me over. I had gone through a stop sign and hadn't fully stopped the car and my music was blasting. As he pulled up behind me, I had panicked. I just froze. I had gotten beatings in the past from the police when you get out and run. Even if you're in a stolen car, the worst thing you could do from a cop in Philadelphia was run, because they're going to chase you down and they're going to beat your face in. So I sat there in frozen terror, and I have a brain injury called aphasia from when I was a little boy at the age of 7. I got assaulted and someone beat my head in with a rock. So I'm sitting there paralyzed with fear, and this cop gets really angry at me because I'm not answering his questions. I'm not responding to him knocking on the window to get me to put the window down. I'm sitting there holding the wheel, frozen in terror. I keep looking up at him over my left shoulder, and next thing you know, he ripped the door open and we start fighting. And he kept putting his forearm on my throat, pressing back against my throat, and I couldn't breathe, and I knocked his hands away. He took out his nightclub, and it's a 2.5 foot long stick, and he tried to hit me with it, and I took it out of his hand like he was a child. And he became furious, and he took the gun out of his holster, and he attempted to raise the gun up at me, and I grabbed his hands and pushed downward, and the gun went off. And that's how everything began that night.
Yeah, that's an unbelievable story.
To everyone listening to my story today, I promise you, despite the nature of its videographic imagery, it takes a lot for me to do this. And I'm grateful for your patience. And I hope that you bear with me while I do this with Stephen. And I want you all to know this isn't something that I can do without realizing there's someone really important that needs to hear this message. Someone who's struggling with anger or depression, or they're going through hard times like I am. And they get it. So for them, we'll go through this embarrassment and we'll get through this, Stephen. Because like you, man, you know what it's like when people are down. And that's why you're doing this, man.
Look, Nick, let me say firstly, my life in later years now, after overcoming my own adversity, has been to try and improve as many people's lives as possible. No one never gave me anything either. I had to work really hard for everything. But that's not the important thing. The important thing and the privileged thing, certainly for me and the wonderful people I have in my life today, is that I'm here to be able to give the message of strength and hope, you know, the same as you. You know, and when we made this channel, Nick, The Big Shift, this is what The Big Shift is all about. You know, it really is. This is what it's all about. Is
exactly why I'm doing the same thing.
Yeah.
It is your purpose. And like Pablo Picasso said, the meaning of life is to find your purpose.
Yeah.
And
Agreed.
then the purpose of life is to give that gift away. You know, finding your gift is your purpose. And I've gone around like you. In the last 5 years alone, so many people have turned to me and not killed themselves or not gone back on the drugs. I get messages from Tunisia or places you wouldn't expect it, where these young kids are struggling with identity issues or drug issues or self-abuse, and they trust me to listen to them. They offer up their hearts. So this is why I come out here, and I'll make an effort with you on this podcast to tell my origins of where I began, because I can't believe it that at a 20-year-old age, when we began this story of being arrested falsely by a police officer who was very aggressive, it then turned into false murder charges and all the things that followed. But here I am now, and I'm thinking there had to be a meaning to it. And if not, I have a duty to give meaning to that by doing exactly what you did. Like, I looked you up and I know you did some real hard time, man. And it's been bleak. I only had one question for you. I wanted to know, were you suffering the same thing as me when you got back into society, were the shoes on your feet hurting you?
Yeah, I mean, it was tough. I was institutionalized, Nick. I really was. So much institutionalized at times I didn't even know it. I was in a bubble of my own making, and my
I
learnings
meant,
from that is that look, that as it took me 4 years to really start absorbing my circumstances and that sentence of having no future and the desolation of the violence and all that, on the other end, coming out, like going through a revolving door, I lost 12 years of my life, all of it maximum security, a lot of violence and gang stuff, just like that. But then it took me 2, 3, 4 years on the other side of that to become human again.
that's the thing that I really excelled at. The thing that made me one of the most dangerous prisoners on death row was that so many other men inside there loved me. See, after a while, I used my mind to open my heart and help them. You know how many guys are in there and they're illiterate, man. You know what I mean, Stephen. They can't write a letter. They can't do their legal work. But I was a whiz at doing legal work. I got other men off of death row. I wrote letters to their moms. I made their words sound beautiful. Who's going to hurt that guy?
Oh, that's wonderful. And you know what? For me, there was times I can remember walking them landings like the Walking Dead. I was sucked of all emotion at the most primitive level as a human being for me to survive. And then the hatred kept me going, Nick. I mean, I was very disruptive. I was one of the UK's most dangerous prisoners. So I kept setting myself up for this stuff and to fail. And it was a never ending cycle. But I was intelligent enough, thankfully, to know towards the end that, look, I need to find my way back to myself because I always had a good heart to navigate out of this. And it's been a long road, to where I am now. I've really been looking forward, to speaking to you about what goes on with a human being when they go through immense torture, mental, spiritual, emotional, captive torture like that. So, so you was arrested, you was arrested for this murder that you didn't commit. Now I've watched Fear of the Number 13, and I know it was a strange one because you actually give up someone else, didn't you? In that state that you was back in the day, that drug-addled state. Do you want to tell us about that?
Right. Yeah, all right. So I'm 20 years old. This cop has now lied on me. And instead of the incident that I described at the beginning where I told you what happened, he said he pulled me over. I jumped out of my car, ran back to his car, beat him up and drug him out of his car before he had a moment of reaction, took his gun off of him and was pointed at his face trying to murder him when he heroically overpowered me and took the gun off me. So I'm sitting in jail, banged up on the charges of attempted murder and kidnapping of a police officer, and I've never even put my hands on the man like that. So I'm sitting there, and I come up with a dumbass story from a newspaper in my cell, thinking I can make up a lie to get out of a lie, and I blame a guy who I think is dead. That's the difference. I wasn't trying to put this on someone. I had a childhood drug buddy who died of a drug overdose. The only misinformation I got was it wasn't him that died, it was his brother Joey. So I made the mistake of trying to bang up a dead man who was actually alive, so that when the police come and find him, they find out he has an alibi because I told him that this guy confessed to me of the murder of a woman out at the local area that was a mystery murder. And all of a sudden, the police look at me and say, no, 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 you did it. So they went out and they recruited a man by the name of Charles Catalino, who had been convicted of burglarizing the prosecutor's home. And they got him to say that I confessed to him of the murder of the woman I never even met in my life. So at the age of 20, I'm sitting there, I'm facing attempted murder charges and kidnapping still of this police officer. And now I've been arrested and charged with the kidnapping, rape, and murder of a woman named Linda Mae Craig. And I don't know what the hell to do. Yeah, I couldn't believe my misfortune of making up a lie has backfired. And now I'm sitting here facing murder charges because I tried to con my way out. And so I go to trial. The jury finds me not guilty of all of the charges against this police officer, and that's my undoing. The prosecutor took it as a personal insult that a jury would rule against him. And this is how it works in America. He was allowed to take over the prosecution of the murder case the very next week. And he was allowed to ask for the death penalty the very next week, where they had never sought it before. Because they know in America, when you so-called death qualify a jury, meaning you can find people that will go along with the death penalty, they're more likely to convict you. It's a pretty good strategy. They're more prone for a conviction if they're okay with killing you anyway. So
Absolutely.
I jury trial, and they set it up right before America's big holiday of Independence Day, 3 days beforehand, knowing that the jury's going to be under pressure again to return a verdict. They're very clever how they design these things. In fact, the opening word of the judge to the jury was, "Ladies and gentlemen, I know all of you have a major concern about this case, in that in the next 3 days, the 4th of July holiday weekend will begin Friday. But I want you to know that this being Tuesday, I will have this jury trial commenced and completed before that date, and you can all go home and we won't have to worry."
Now,
In other words,
yeah.
Go ahead, man. I didn't even count against their hot dogs in celebration of fireworks, man.
Look,
so
this is let me come in there, because there's an important point here, and because for normal people out there, Nick, as you know, they see the law as something not to be challenged, doesn't lie, you know. Is this all omnipotent kind of omnipresent force that always gets it right? Now, me and you know that this is absolutely wrong. You know, we know that there must be a law, protective law in society to regulate things. But my experience was, look, you know, even me, when I got arrested, they moved evidence, they done all this stuff. You know, what I would say to people out there, you know, to audiences out there is, look, the law may be as it is, but it's populated by normal people with motivations and agendas, right? And
what
designs.
what I always say is it has a human flaw.
Absolutely. This is important to remember, you know, and there you have a classic example. Look, something so serious, a man's life, who didn't even commit a murder, and what is more taken with in the room is that we should rush this forward and not worry too much, because the 4th of July is coming on and we need to get the hot dogs on the stove. I mean, this is ridiculous, but I know this stuff goes on. So it's important to put that out just to measure people's views. I know there's intelligent people out there, all right? Because it's been proved that you spent all these years unlawfully, Nick, right? So tell us about the day that in court where you got sentenced to death. What was that like?
I was the only person looking around the room, and no one could make eye contact with me. Do you know what I mean? You know what I mean? Look, all right, so someone challenges you in life. You as a man, you stand up with your eyes, you know, like you look around for that challenge, right? Well, that jury just found me guilty, and not one of them could raise their eyes up and look me in the eye. The judge put his head down. The prosecutor, every person I looked around the room at, all of a sudden, shamefully, didn't have the courage to look me in the eye. That's what it felt like. Like I was so upset that no one had the guts to look me in the face when they all knew what they just did to me. My mom, God bless her, had to be taken out of the courtroom because people started viciously attacking my family. The jeering, the taunting, ha, 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 kill that bastard. You know what I mean? And then I was taken out of this courthouse and I was put in a holding cell 2 stories above the building. You see, A lightning storm had come that day and struck the building, and we were in emergency power lighting. And as they put me in this semi-darkened room where the only light coming in was the outside light, I looked out into the courtyard and I saw them all celebrate. People who I had gone over and been babysat by as a child, or I was childhood friends with their parent. You know, their parents knew me. They were laughing. They thought it was funny, man. And my parents had to be taken out of the area. And the jury took time out to go to the Wagon Wheel restaurant to have dinner while they decided my fate. Imagine having dinner served to you while you decide to put a 20-year-old boy to death.
It's crazy.
It was hard, man. I wasn't afraid. I was just disappointed. No one had the guts to challenge me and look me in the face and say, take that, or yeah, you deserved it. No one said a word to me.
And look, in the trial, because, you know, it's been proven, obviously, you didn't commit, you know, this murder. You know, you was falsely convicted, right? In all intents and purposes, right? To death, right? You know, 22 years you was on death row. Now, so what was your defense lawyer like during the trial? Do you think he fought for you? Obviously, you was not guilty. There must have been some evidence that proved that. I've looked through the case and I know it's unbelievably dodgy, just even looking at it, Nick. How was the defense lawyer?
Sam Stretton represented me for $1,500 for both trials, meaning he represented me against a police officer. The court wouldn't grant him any monies for any defense experts. I had a 3-day trial, and meaning he was overwhelmed. And a lot of it was to do, it's just sad. People outside of America can't appreciate that. Sam Stretton was running for Pennsylvania senator. He was running as a Democrat. The whole county that I was in Delaware County, was Republican. They kept making political references about him being too busy running for senator to come and help me during my trial, and castigating him over his representation while it had nothing to do with politics. It was a sham. In the end, Sam Stretton did something that I really felt unhinged me and hurt me during my testimony, in that he got me to read my suicide note to my mother that I wrote after I was being tortured so badly I couldn't take it no more. And he said that he did so hoping that my expression of tears would draw sympathy from the jury when I hadn't done anything. Why make me upset?
This is crazy. This is a crazy strategy. Let's go there, Nick. Let's go there to the torture, because I know they put you through unbelievable things. Tell us what they've done. Just give us what happened in that cell when they took you in there that led to you writing that note.
So the detectives, see, I keep telling you how clever they are. Other than this guy, Charles Catalino, who had already had a conviction for robbing the prosecutor's home, saying that I confessed to him, they had no evidence, no murder weapon, nothing to link me to this crime. So the detectives tried to put on a show when bringing me back from court one day by giving me a big hug and saying that they were going to go kick some doors in right in front of two Pagans motorcycle gang members, making it look like I had just come back from being an informant. The two motorcycle gang members went back to the block and told everybody they just witnessed me being a snitch. The next thing you know, a guy tries to put my eye out with a broken broom handle that's sharpened into a spear. I managed to only get punctured in the side of the head. I had bleach thrown in my face. When the door was shut, they tried to throw every kind of liquid, everything. They filthily just threw everything on me when my door was locked. Then when they would open my door for me to go to the shower to wash the filth off of me, I just fought my way to the door, man. So I'm sorry to say that I had an ultraviolet childhood. I got kicked out of the Philadelphia school system because I injured a teacher during a riot. I had a long history of violence in my childhood. And at 6'2", 220 pounds, I just came out the door blazing, man. And so I manufactured all kind of weapons. I fought my whole way to the shower just to get the piss and stuff that they threw on me off of me, and then fought my way back to the cell while the guards pretended to be on break or something. So that went on for a week, and I did my best, but there's 2 and 3 attacking you at once. So you got to hit one guy while you're getting punched 3 times. So it wasn't fair, you know?
Yeah.
So I hung myself at the weekend. I couldn't take it no more. And this guard caught me, and he cut me down and told me that I wasn't cheating the state of Pennsylvania out of my sentence, and that I was going to go through this process, he said, because he made sure that I wasn't getting out of it the easy way.
Wow, that's unbelievable. And look, you know, I mean, I'll make no bones about it. You know, I've seen some of the toughest men, and I was even there myself, Nick. You know, 4 years into that sentence. Not that I was scared of anything. I wasn't scared of anything in that way, but I was in such a primitive state of couldn't see a future, and so much was going on with me. I was looking for the shortcut too. I know many of my friends, some of the, you know, the biggest, strongest men, some of them sadly are not even here, right? This is not a strength issue in that way, right? When you're brought to such a level, I'm just putting that out there because, you know, the mind is such a thing, you know, and, you know, the big shift is about helping people through these things, you know?
People don't get this. I was 20 years old. I was fighting grown men every day, and I didn't do it. I didn't kill anybody, and I didn't have no way to speak for myself, and I hated myself, and I was a junkie and a liar and a thief, and I had no morality. I don't even know how I hung on, but my mom came to the prison to see me, and they made her come up to the hospital wing because I was locked down on all 4 shackles. And while she sat next to me holding my hand, inmates were allowed to go get their medications. And as they passed by the room, they kept making all kind of horrible comments to me and my mother. I mean, degrading shit. And she just made me promise her that I wouldn't do this no more. She said, I don't care what you got to do. You come home to me. You didn't do this. You don't do this to yourself. If you didn't kill that woman, why would you kill yourself? And it hit me. She said, you were about to do something to yourself that I could never, as my child, ever envision you hanging another human being. How could you do that to my baby?
It's a great way to say it.
So I made her a promise. I was going to do what I had to do to come home to her. And if I had to squash people in my way, then so be it. Like, I jumped off the 2nd tier of the county jail, landed on a billiard table, picked up 2 billiard balls, and smashed them into the face of a man who had attacked me the week earlier. Sorry about this. My dog's making this jump. And I was willing to go and do all that violence because I needed to. I felt like I had to send a message to all these guys that if you attack me, so what? Let's do this, right? And after a while, what happened was I got charged for Lyndon Mays Craig's murder, but there was no co-defendant. And suddenly the gang members, this one guy named Angel Cimaros is the leader. He's actually now my friend. Later on, I actually did legal work for this guy. This is how crazy prison is. He put out the word that no one was to touch me again. When the gang members realized that they got played for suckers by an incident that never happened, by no one ever get arrested by me and my talking, they felt used and they decided that wasn't right. So the prison actually became very comfortable to me then because no one wanted to make sure anybody bothered me. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Prison is like crazy. That, you know, it has its rules, and You know, certainly, yeah. You know, I see that dynamic. You know, there was times officers in there and other people, they would use us to do things, you know,
Yeah,
you know, and
that's what
stuff
I
like
mean.
that. And, you know, and you know, you would realize, I mean, this is always wrong. So look, um, what was that first walk like going into death row, Nick?
Oh
We
man,
want to
they beat my
impact
ass.
people and really let them know what the experience of this is like so that we can help them on their journey. What was it like, that first long walk down to that cell?
You got to understand, I didn't get the grace of being allowed to walk. They took me off the
Wow.
prison bus.
Okay.
They beat me senseless, man. They wanted to send a message to me when I first got to the official death row in Huntington, Pennsylvania, where I would spend the next 12 years in solitary confinement. In 1983, this place had been condemned by the United Nations for its active practices of torture. You weren't allowed to speak in your cell. You had 15 minutes of exercise 3 times a week. And if you broke any of the rules, they put you in a glass bubble, meaning those glass bricks that they turn pub windows into. They made a whole wall of them across the front of a block of cells. And it was ultra quiet. And they could see through the glass bricks. And they kept you awake every 15 minutes for a head count until you broke. So for me, I didn't get a chance to walk into that long corridor and go down to my cell. I got drugged down there by my feet after they beat my ass by telling me I wasn't allowed to speak in this cell. And if I didn't understand the rules, they were going to explain them to me with this beat. I was 21 years old, and I was horrified that I had to spend however many days in here. So that started my anger. I used to sit in my bed, and I would beat my head on the wall. Bam, 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 all day long. Because if I wasn't in pain, I couldn't be in anger. If I couldn't be angry, I couldn't get through this. So that's what I was thinking, just like you. The only thing's going to keep me going is I'm going to fight these people back and be angry, angry,
Yeah, I
angry.
had the same experience, Nick. You know, I really did. They've beaten you. They've dragged you by your feet down to the cell, and they've thrown you in there. Probably give you a few more belts on the way through. They've snarled at you, let you know in no uncertain terms that this is your personal hell on earth, and there's no way out. I know what that feels like. When that door closes first, what did you feel when you thought about what was stretched out in front of you? What was going through your mind, Nick?
I knew one thing, someone was going to pay for this. Like, that's what I kept thinking. I didn't know it was going to be me. I stupidly thought it was going to be someone else that I was going to take it out on my hands. But that's what I kept thinking. That's crazy. You know what I mean? That thought, like, man, somebody's going to pay for doing this to me. Yeah, I did this to me. I put myself there. I made up a stupid story as a 20-year-old kid, and I put myself on death row. I don't have no one to blame. What I realized is that, oddly enough, thanks to a prisoner killing himself on my tier, on the same level on my block, I got a blessing. I was taken past his cell, and a guard made me go in his cell and find some books. And he told me if I read those books, I'd stop being angry. Now, at the time, it wasn't no big glorious moment. It's just one of those offhanded things someone says to you. But I went in my cell and I stopped. And I thought, I'm either going to be an animal and just be nothing, or I'm going to try and do something about this. I got to fight somehow. I didn't do this. I got to figure out some kind of way of being better. Like you said, and I think there comes a moment in every man's life. You know inside whether or not you're a good person. And when that moment comes, you're going to do the thing you know in your heart you got to do. So I just sat down at my desk and I just started working every day to try and educate myself so I could stop speaking stupidly. I was so embarrassed by the way that I used to talk. Oh. And the only way I could do it is crazy. I had to wait. You see, because I escaped from death row in 1985 by an accident, and I end up on the run for 25 days before I turned myself back in. And that incident led to a beating that lasted 4 minutes. They beat me so badly that they broke all my teeth and stuff like that. They really did damage to me, you know? And it was only at that moment when I was sitting there, pissing blood, couldn't hardly stand in front of the toilet, feeling like I was just nothing. I had 100 years on top of my death sentence. I wasn't ever expected to see the outside again. I started asking myself, what is like worth it? Like what can I make anything worth anything? So I started reading all the world's religions. And I didn't know this was going to be an event, but I just wanted an answer. When I finished reading all of the world's religions, in this time span of about 3 years, when I read 1,000 books itself, I found out about DNA testing. I became the very first man in the United States or in the world to seek DNA testing from death row to prove my innocence in February of 1988, nearly 3 years after that beating. And I was so grateful that I began a process that began with a beating that made me so humble that I stopped being angry and started questioning what gives me purpose? Why am I here? What is my spirituality? Who am I? And then I get the keys to my cell handed to me when I think I have it figured out.
Yeah. Now, to come in there, you know, you was on this wing and there's no speaking on there. There's a no speaking rule, right? Now, look, you know, I done probably 4 years in solitary, maybe a little bit longer, maybe going on to 4.5 or something like that. Now, I really know what it's like to have the silence day after day and all that stuff. But even we would break it sometimes where we'd go somewhere, we'd have a friend and we'd speak in the window or through the pipe. But I know that this place that you was in was really different. There really was no speaking in there. What was that actually like? And what did that do to your mind and your emotions day to day, Nick?
You have to understand it was a designed form of torture.
Yeah.
Because a man who has been wrong, especially, needs to tell someone.
Yeah.
A man with woes in his heart has to express it. And when you deny someone this basic thing, it drives them crazy. I like, it's sad, but I witnessed 11 homicides. I was on a unit that was so hard that the average lifespan was only 5 years. If you lasted more than 5 years on B block, people looked at you like you weren't human, like there was something extraordinary about you. And I felt it too, Stephen. I felt the pain of, I wished so many times when something would happen, I had the ability to turn to someone and just say anything. But the strange thing is, after a while, the crack epidemic exploded and the prisons doubled so much they had to give up the no talking rule. And when they did, it went from complete silence to complete chaos, to the point that they actually burned the prison during a riot in 1989. Imagine 244 death row prisoners all locked up and the guards run off after they yell, "Burn, bitches, burn," because the inmates have taken over the block next to yours, and they set this prison that was built in the 1700s on fire. You can look out of your death row window and you can see the building burning next to you. It was a night I'll never forget because the governor called in the National Guard, and these troops came in with the state police, and whoever was outside of their cell got beaten senseless, stripped naked, and dragged by their boot heels out past my door, and then stacked like cords of wood in the exercise cages behind death row. It was the perfect setup to put all these prisoners who had been rioting. And every one of them got drugged past my cell until there was a river of urine and blood and tears right there on the floor, 4 foot wide. Body after body being drugged by these men that are dressed up like robotic ants. They're in black. Everything's black helmet, black face mask, black gloves, black boots, everything. And they're big. Do you know what I mean when they send in the goon squad?
Absolutely. Over here, they call it CNR, control and restraint.
Yeah. That's
so this is the riot gear, right? The shields, the bands, this is how they do it over here. But it's the same thing, Nick. It's the same thing.
Yeah. And that went on all night, Stephen, watching human beings get beaten, and beaten. And then I knew what was coming. After any riot in a prison, they go through every cell, don't they? So when they bring in the guards from other prisons to do this, it's horrifying because they exact vengeance on you for the guard that lost his eye or something. They think, why not? Who's going to bother to say anything to me? I'm beating the shit out of a death row prisoner. But I had a really cool officer named Ezekiel, and he was Hispanic. And he came to my cell and he told me to put my hands out backwards, not to say a word, stand on the tier next to him. The guards are going to come in and they're going to destroy all my stuff, but I'm not going to say a word. And I said, yes, sir. I saw them out on the tier by sticking my mirror out with my hand, beating other men. I knew what was coming. They look up your records. They know you're convicted of kidnapping and rape and murder. Oh, you escaped from death row as well? You're getting a beating. But because of that one officer, I stood there with my face pressed against the concrete wall, and I kept my mouth shut, and they destroyed all of my belongings, but they didn't beat me. He put me back in the cell, and he said, I want you to know one thing. I'm not part of this.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you know, I'll come in there too, you know, because it's right too, is my experience in prisons. And, you know, I was in the worst, you know, I was moved around to the worst, and, you know, even the worst, they couldn't control me at points. This is why they used to lessen the burden on other prisoners, and they'd ship us around. It was called the ghost train.
What they call it, Wandsworth Way?
Yeah, all of them, God, all of them places, really, you know. They used to throw you down the stairs into the segregation, down the iron stairs, in Wandsworth, you know, into the seg, and then throw you down them stairs, right? I was notorious. And these are these heavy iron stairs, Nick. I mean, they kill you. You know, you hit your head off them, they kill you, I'm telling you. They'll be waiting at the bottom for you, you know, and they'd beat you, man. They'd strip you naked. They'd take you into the strip cell. They'd truss you up like a chicken, and then they'd run out, you know. And this was the start of the tit for tat, and you know, it would get very, very violent down there, very nasty in some of these blocks. But look, I have to say, even still, you know, some blocks in some segregation units in the UK penal system, they would have certain squads where they would be waiting for you. But generally, on the wings, you know, you may have 60% of officers was okay. You know, they'd be doing their job, but you'd always get this group, 30+%, you know, and they was power trippers. You know, they was weak people who was in the gang, and they was nasty, Nick, right? Was it the same over there? Did you have the same experience?
Well, over here, you have to understand they build prisons in the rural areas, out in the coal mine country.
Yeah.
And they guarantee population in that area gets 40% of the staffing jobs.
Right.
Well, the person that they're going to go out and look for is going to be fresh from the military, over 6'2" tall, and at least 200 and, well, like 19 or 20 stone. He's got to be big and strong, and he's got to be able to follow orders, but not be too clever. So who are you going to deal with? You're going to find some of them were good officers that were really amazing. I had some great, brilliant friendships with a lot of them. The problem is you're going to have the asshole. You're going to have that person who decides he's got to go ahead and, all right, the whole 1989 riot was caused by one officer abusing a Muslim prisoner. So it can be that sinister where one officer can cause the whole prison to go up in flames.
Absolutely.
Whereas there's 50 good officers on that same shift that paid for that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So look, you stay there. You stay.
I would like to say this.
Yeah.
I know a lot of your listeners are on both sides of the aisle. Yeah. Anyone who is in law enforcement or in the penology system of guarding our prisons, I love you. I want you to meet me and see me as a human being so that the next person you deal with might get a break. I want you to have my utmost respect. I don't call you Popo or disrespect you. I call you officer and give you your respect so that the next person you encounter, you might give them that play. Yeah. I don't like it that people go out in society and they bash the police and they bash everyone else because of this personal thing about them. Either they've been arrested or whatever. That ain't cool, because that's not the officer that arrested you. That's like going against a black person or an Asian person. To me, it's like racism, you know? That's why even though America's got all these problems with the police, I am the most polite and utterly respectful person to a law enforcement person, hoping that it keeps him human and the next person he deals with gets a break. I'm doing my part that way.
Absolutely. And you know what? Violence only begets more violence, Nick. And the one thing, the best way I've ever heard it said, and it has to be said, was by the words of Martin Luther King. He said, violence, is never going to stop or end violence. Only love can do that. And he's so right. It's so true.
It's true.
It's absolutely true. That's why I had to say that. And look,
transition. Stephen, that's a perfect point to transition to, because I went from being ultra violent on death row, where I survived over 50 cage fights, man, where the guards would just pick you and another guy out about your size, put you in a cage, and you two fought it out, or the 4 men standing outside the cage with the clubs beat you both up. I went through all that to the point where men were so in love with me as a good friend that no one on the tier disrespected me. I was a man of stature. I worked to the point that men trusted me to do their legal work, to help them with their schoolwork, to help them emotionally. All of that transitioned into a point that I had an identity. And it's crazy how on death row there was certain guys you could go to and they would help you. And I was one of them.
Yeah. And you know what? Look, this is a perfect example of turning immense adversity and challenge into something good, something positive, something that brings hope and is, and is creative from something so dark. And it can be done, and it needs to be done in these challenging times. Now, look, I want to go back in there, Nick, a little bit more. So, look, because there's guys out there that we know that are really suffering. I get loads of these guys who contact me. I do a lot of exclusive coaching with certain people now over trauma and different stuff. When we go right into that stuff, into that darkness, they would say, oh, yeah, but it's so hard. And, What was your solution? How did you actually overcome yourself and them feelings that had drove you down that road in the first place?
I began practicing learning how to respectfully speak to myself. In other words, I decided if I'm ever going to get through this with any kind of mental stability, or I'm going to not get through this and still have mental stability, I got to learn how to respect myself. And in order to do that, I began with a simple process. I took a photograph that I liked of myself. It was of me as a boy holding up a nice large fish I caught in the Susquehanna River. And I put this one photograph of myself on the wall. I took everything down and I began to politely speak to myself. I didn't know that this was the basis of neuroplasticity healing, and that I was actually triggering my own healing by politely, and I mean meticulously, politely speaking to myself every day, because I was releasing my own healing in my brain. And later on, I found out about these studies, and that every one of us has this reward system built into our brain. And we can go out and we can practice meticulous politeness on another human being. We will forget about our PTSD. We will let go of our anger and our petty squabbles. And I was doing it on death row by talking to myself. And the whole reason I was doing it wasn't to do with neuroplasticity healing. I was doing it because I was trying to prepare myself to be executed at the age of 27. So at the age of 27, I began speaking to myself by practicing my deaf speech in the aftermath of speaking to myself. Because I had a speech impediment, I wanted to get the cadence down so I could speak and beautifully enunciate all of my words without failing when they executed me. And here, I gave myself this beautiful ability to talk, to speak, to really even draw myself in, so I listened to myself. I didn't know that that was going to change me, but it did. It gave me a self-appreciation I never had before. And this is what those prisoners deal with that they can't handle. Sorry, everyone. I have an escape.
Yeah. Show us the dogs. Let's have a look at them lovely dogs. Look at them. You got a litter there, and wow.
So I have 8 puppies here I'm trying to care for in an RV that I'm living.
Yeah, have a look. Show the audience that out there. Look, isn't that beautiful? You know, isn't it a privilege to be free and amongst the human race? Look.
I'll bet you. How many times have you caught yourself looking up at the nighttime sky when you first got out?
Oh, do you know what I have to say now? I have to say something's just come in there. I can remember with so much darkness and so much years in that concrete tomb that I used to fantasize about being able just to walk by myself along a stretch of grass, man, free. Nothing more than that. Nothing more than that. I didn't need no medal. I didn't need no fancy dinner or fancy clothes, but just to be able to have the feeling of being alone in that kind of free space, just to walk across a stretch of grass. I used to fantasize about it.
Crazy. I want to know the first thing I did when I got out? I stood on grass. Like, children asked me this because I did over 400 presentations at schools over the UK. And I'll never forget, I was out in Frome, and this kid asked me, what was the first thing I did that I really thought about when I got out? And I said, I walked on grass with my bare feet after 20 years, man. And sadly, it was on top of my little brother's grave, but still, I wanted to feel that connection to the earth again. Like, it's so, people can't get this. It's so anesthetic. It's so far removed from nature that you actually dream of the sound of birds and the whisper of the wind against the rustling of leaves. And you would get to the point where you would dream of watching a rainy day in peace in the woods.
Look, yeah, and people don't get this because it's such a unnatural and crushing environment where
Yes,
every
sir.
day is the same. When this stretches out to years, now look, I'm going to put something else in there because I want people who have never been to prison and who may be getting in with the wrong crowd or think it's clever to pursue this criminal career or don't care about prison or anything like that, and don't really have a lot of other choices, maybe even, and I want them to understand that life is so abundant and there are so many other ways to live, and one reflection of that is to show them the mirror of just how bad it is on the other side and what awaits for them if they go down that path, and that nothing is worth
Look,
that. Okay.
I'm in that position where you're trying to talk to them. Imagine someone trying to tell me at the age of 20 that I was going to go to death row, but I hadn't killed anyone. Like, you don't get it. All right. So here's what I remember most. The truth is, the way I lived allowed anything to be said about me and people would believe it.
That's the truth.
The way I lived allowed anyone to have an ability to attack me and say what they wanted, and people would believe it because my actions made me suspect. So if you think about this, the way you carry yourself, young man, determines whether or not someone could bang you up for a lie or even mess you up in life behind a lie, because your character is suspect, because you're running with the wrong crowd, because you know you're doing dirty. And even if it's not the dirt that you did, you know in your heart you're dirty because you're out running in the streets doing wrong. And that's what a lot of guys don't know. Yeah, you maybe not have been arrested yet. You've gotten away with a lot of shit. You think you're clever, but anybody who really knows you don't trust you, and they don't want to ever find like a willingness to defend you. They will accept anything negative about you too. So you sold yourself out.
Absolutely. And I want to say on the flip side of that, Nick, right, as you know, is we are creators and we are a reflection of the quality of our thoughts. And another clear fact is we can choose to be anything we want to be, really. Choose something. I mean, where I come now and what I do now, and you from where I was, is that is a fact and living history, right? So, the other part of that, another part of that is I want to show them some darkness again now, and then I want to ask you your view on this, is that when I was in prison for so long, entombed like that, a funny thing happens to a man's mind, because you go in there and you're running on your memories, just like you looked at that photo. We don't want to feel so terrible for so long. So the brain and our thoughts, we try and adjust to think of better things, better moments, to feel better. So you're running on memories and you're running on emotions, but you know that after a period of years, when you're in that zone, maybe 3 or 4 years have passed, you realize that these memories are a figment of your imagination. They're redundant because the world has moved on. And then you realize that you haven't made any more, because every day is a dark, black day, and the memories you're making are even worse because they're full of violence, pain, and torture. This is a really weird place to be. I know that you've been there, right? And this is where the walking dead and the sucking of your soul really comes in. So I just want to paint that picture to people so they understand about what long-term prison is like. What do you say to that, Nick?
The only escape from that is education.
Yeah.
Education gives you an ability to separate. When you have the ability to separate you from your situation, like you said, you could be anyone. And that's the beauty of it. I didn't get this simple connection. But once I became an educated person, I had the ability to separate me from my situation to the point of having an ability to stop tormenting myself. So what that I didn't have new sensory inputs of new memories, I was going to enlighten myself and go look for what I couldn't find in myself And this is what was wonderful. I read over 9,000 books in total by the end of 23 years. I did psychology courses. I studied art history. I challenged myself to get over that poofiness and get into it. Who are you? Because I know there's a moment you stood in front of that mirror that was bolted onto the wall and you asked yourself, who the fuck am I? And that moment came after a brutal period. And that moment changed you forever because you decided, I'm going to find that out. And you took a process. It doesn't come to you all in that moment. There's no way someone says, well, I am this or I'm that. I think it's more of, I'll show you who I am.
Yeah. So, Nick, look, that's a great answer.
My friend next door, hi, Sam, who shares the puppies with me, I'm sorry, this is so organically honest, is trying to tell me he's going into town to get supplies so that he's going to pick up some dog food for me and Mango in my litter. So, yeah, sorry, everyone. I'd rather be honest like this than a polished performance. Sorry, man.
No, absolutely. People get that. This is the real stuff. This is the real stuff, Nick.
You know what? I would talk to you exactly like I'm talking to you if we met in a cafe somewhere, Stephen. That's brilliant. You know what I mean? And I like the fact that you understood one thing that I really craved. Of all the loss, the one thing I craved was nature, like you. I wanted to feel
simple stuff. Yeah, man. Simple, so simple. Look, Nick.
You know,
I wanna now start getting into the transformational stuff because we've really gone there with the painful stuff. So listen, where was the first bit of light for you? Well, you served 22 years on death row, right? And then what was it like? You know, you've navigated yourself through that torture and education, you challenging yourself at the enlightenment of you. So what happened then when the doors to freedom were starting to open to you? What was that like?
Imagine this. You're sitting in the back seat of a car. No, in the front seat of a car, in the passenger seat. Behind you are your parents who are both 70 years old. You're now a 42-year-old person, male or female, it doesn't matter, you'll get this. You have a 6-hour drive ahead of you. You've just been released from death row. The driver turns on the radio and Supertramp comes on the radio. And you can't make this up. Goodbye, Mary, goodbye, Jane, till we ever meet again. My parents reach over and touch hands. They're sitting there listening to this song, holding hands, having just gotten their son off of death row after a 23-year-long nightmare in which people have tortured you and they've made you feel small. And there it is, that simple gesture when I saw my parents holding hands in the back seat, listening to this song on the radio, and the words are really just killing me because I'm having this experience and everyone else just seems so normal about it. And I realized right there what I was coming back to was I was going to have to fight through everything they did to me to be human enough to hold someone's hand.
And you know what, Nick, look, you know, thanks for that. Earlier in the interview, you know, I expanded on the same thing where I had to find my way back to myself. People won't get this either. And that wasn't a short journey. And it wasn't without its pain, its loss, its loneliness, its tribulations. But you know what? It had to be done. And, you know, I say to people, look, because of this, what we're talking about, I didn't start at the starting gates. I was 10 foot under the floor. So when I had to come up to ground zero, then I had to build again, like every other normal human being. Was that what it was like for you?
Yeah, so, well, imagine it was just like this for you as well. I got out at the age of 42. And it was like someone handed me a blank piece of paper and said, write down who you are and tell us who you are, because the outside world has no clue who you are. And so imagine you have to start over, don't you? None of your mates, no one knows you.
No, it's complete ground zero.
Right. So I started off, I was told that I had to have a liver transplant or I was going to make it within 3 years of release because of the damage done to me by the hepatitis C that they infected me with, which is the reason I asked to be executed before I got the DNA testing done. Anybody knows my story knows that I was pushed so badly. I actually asked to be executed for a crime that I didn't commit because I was suffering so badly in prison. I felt there was no point. So I get out and I'm on a short leash. I got to try and get everything done before my health fails me. And it was incredible that I was so humble that I remember I went out to try and earn some money because my parents didn't have anything and I was a new mouth to feed. My nephew's child and his girlfriend was living with my parents because he was in prison for bank robberies. So I walk into this situation where I'm now another mouth to feed for a pair of 70-year-old parents who are on a pension. What am I going to do? My dad was actually still working at that time, fixing roofs. So I went out and I got my first speech for $35 for some businessmen by getting up at 5:30 in the morning and borrowing my mom's car. And you know what? It was one of the best events for me because I realized I had a gift. I had a room full of 12 businessmen who couldn't stop asking me to continue. Please, no, don't stop. Don't. We're going to be late. It doesn't matter. We'll have our secretaries call. But my God, whatever it is you have to say, continue. And I realized right then, maybe I can do this. So with the help of some friends from the University of Pennsylvania, I began an effort to kill the death penalty in America, and I ended up in England. And I addressed a combined session of the lower House of Commons. In 2004, I was the first ever former death row prisoner from America to have the honor to stand behind the portrait of the Prime Minister while I addressed the lower house. And it was a fascinating thing to me that Kofi Annan, the UN Secretary General, told me at that time I was one of the finest speakers he had ever heard, and I was only 10 months out of jail.
Wow, that is really something. And you know what, Nick, you know, you'll see if you look at my story, some similar stuff, but that is really unbelievable. And look, you know, this is the joyous part for me where, because you truly are a miracle, like me, you know, it's been said by other people, who am I, of the human spirit transforming and overcoming unbelievable adversity, things that people never come back from. I mean, look, you know, you're a prolific author now, aren't you? You're a prolific author.
Yeah, I've written 4 books, and sadly, I still can't make a living. Stephen, if I told you the truth, is that the 17 years of my freedom have been harder than all of my death row days.
Wow.
The struggles that I've gone through, like, all right, in February of this year, my wife and children left me. In March, can't even make it up. I got arrested for selling my own books and have probation. I'm homeless. I'm living on the side of the road. I have a dog that just gave babies. And I'm telling you, man, if I didn't go through the hardest days that I went through on death row, I might be a weaker person today, man. Like, it's hard on me today. Like, you wouldn't believe what an effort I'm making to do this for you, knowing that right now I don't have it good. But I figured, why not? Come on here, be honest. Let someone finally see a fucking podcast where someone isn't in the studio or they're not pretending everything's all hokey pokey good, man.
Yeah. So yeah, real life.
Yeah. Right now, today, I got to finish getting myself together. I got to get this dog out to the toilet. She finally finished feeding her babies. I got to go into town and hustle for some supplies and try and take care of myself for the weekend. That's the reality of what I face, because I'm a public speaker. There's no public speaking. There's no gathering. I was supposed to be in Copenhagen at the Royal Ballet Theater a year ago and ended up going homeless for the whole last year, living in the woods.
Yeah.
Now what?
It's been, I mean, look, I have to say, you know, it's been a hard time, you know, for everyone, this COVID thing, you know, especially for that, for this industry.
To hear this. That's why I'm willing to come on here and do this podcast, because people who think they're having it tough because of COVID, you got to put perspective on that. At least you're still alive. You still have a chance. And from a chance, tomorrow changes everything. Me and you in our early 20s would have never believed a word out of anybody's mouth if they told us that one day we would be gentlemen, sitting and having a lovely, eloquent conversation, and both of our hearts would be healed. We'd have laughed them off their bar stool. True?
Absolutely. Do you know what? I was just sitting here, and this, in fact, has been a difficult interview for me, because there's been certain things about you, Nick, that has brought real emotion up on me. You know, really, because people don't get this because they haven't been through. But just there, when you said about with both our hearts healed, I felt it again, because I can't forget of where I've been and just what that was. And then I realized, how grateful I am for everything, Nick.
I'm sorry for interrupting you, but I want to correct you only on one thing. It's not where you've been, brother. It's who you've been while you were there.
Oh, absolutely. No, I agree. Like
I can't forget angry. I can't forget the angry or the sublime. And I've been both in death row. Like there was times in there I was so happy, man, I didn't care about tomorrow. I was just so full of joy.
Yeah.
I was in love with a woman who used to write me every day, and I used to get visits from her. And I was so humble as a man that I was happy. I didn't care about going home. For her, yes, I wanted to, but I was truly in love. And I was happy. And I wasn't supposed to be. And I felt like I was cheating the kings of the world by eating their delights, by being happy while being condemned. And I want to go back to that feeling. And I long for that feeling right now in my life. Like, I hope I get through this next part. Like right now, I've signed on to make a new documentary called Life After Death Row. And if anybody wants to find me and buy my books, that would be a huge help. I just wrote one called Monsters and Madmen, which I kept a whole secret of a psychological experiment I lived through after this period. It never ends, and you know this. There's always going to be parts of your life you never tell people, right? Imagine there's always going to be that for me. And now I'm trying to
I want you to mention your other books as well. You know, we've got them here. The
right
Kindness
now on
Approach
Amazon
was another one. Mention your books, you know, so people out there, you're an unbelievable writer.
The one that's available on Amazon worldwide right now is called Monsters and Madmen, in which I was put into the cell next to Buffalo Bill from Silence of the Lamb, the actual Buffalo Bill, not the character in the movie, but the real one, and his name was Gary Heidnick. And imagine that you're stuck into a hermetically sealed unit of 48 men, and there's a guard inside there who's trying to use various ones to kill you because you insulted him. So for a 3-year period, I had this one guard try to get geriatric serial killers to try and kill me in the shower with a knife and something like that. It was full on. All I can say is I've got some great skills in defense. I thank God. Because this one guard had control of pushing a button and letting someone out to get you. It was crazy.
Yeah, it was crazy. So look, another thing I want to say just quickly is, look, we're certainly coming out of this period here in the UK now, thankfully. And I know around the world it's starting to loosen as well. So look, you know, if anyone would like to get Nick on to do some public speaking or any other kind of work like that where we could help or anything like that, you know, DM on the bottom, you know, or you can contact us, you know, and we'll certainly get in contact with you for them.
Thank you. No, I appreciate that. And look, I've been through this so many times. It might not be rosy for me today, but that doesn't mean there isn't roses around me, man. And I get that. I know it. It's not personal. People ask me, why am I not angry after what has been done to me? And I'm saying, why would I want to make my personal experience the rest of my life experience? So what that someone wronged me once in my life? What do I have to go around with a t-shirt and say someone burned me? No, 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 no. I found out I can climb as high as I believe in myself. And if you don't believe that, in 2016, I was strolling around Lake Geneva in Switzerland after the United Nations Human Rights Council had just screened my movie. And I was up on stage with the former and current presidents of Switzerland. And I'm thinking, this is why I have an ability. I have a gift, and I shouldn't be afraid or ashamed of that gift because other people need to hear a message that's beyond me. I've gotten a great opportunity with Alejandro Monteverdi to make a brand new movie about my life called The Conviction. And the heart of the message is the same as in Fear of 13. We have a duty to tell everyone who we are in life. But more importantly, we have a duty to be convicted of that sincere, and I mean this, utterly sincere effort to be that person to ourselves and to the next person we meet. So it's been a real honor to come on here and talk to you. And you've given me so much to think about again, because it's been years since I thought about my first wishes when I first got out, and how sadly, even though I had to go stand on my little brother's grave, I still had the courage to take my shoes off and stand with the grass and feel connected to humanity again. And that I was still kind enough, I know this is hard, I was still kind enough to let everything be taken from me out here and not revert back to the way I used to be in prison. I think that's the class act. And you know what I mean, because so many times when in the joint, when you've been pressed, it was always going to be a fisticuff or a confrontational ending. But for me to have risen to the point of being a classy gentleman after having so many things done to me after I've been released from prison is proof that I really am, like you said, someone who knows inside I'm a good person. And as a good person, I'm going to keep that going, man.
Nick, on that note, look, you know, I have to say your story is unbelievably inspiring. I agree with you that this is a journey, and it is about learning about ourselves, our gifts, our purpose, so we may give that out to other people of the world, you know. And there's no greater expeditious learning than going through something like you did, 22 years on death row. And it's testament to you that you are that classy gentleman where you are now, and you navigated and overcome not just these terrible circumstances, but yourself, Nick. And you know that this is the true testament to a human being, and that you come out the other side. And I know that there are a lot of people out there who will take a lot from this. And I know that for us, when we do the right things and the right choices, there is always another brighter day around the corner, because there's a new day where we take breath and we choose who we want to be in that day. Nick Yarris, thanks for coming on, really. You know, we'll do some work in the future, I'm sure. I wish you well in everything you do. You're a real inspiration, and I'm glad you're still here with us. And I know you're going to go on to do a lot more work. Nick Yarris, thanks for coming on.
You're welcome, sir. And I want to thank you and your staff. You did an excellent job. I want to also tell you that for me personally, I always call it the one. Now, I could be a lot bigger of an ego, but I just want that one person who's getting this. And I mean it, there's always that one person who gets every syllable, every nuance, and they're listening because it's a truth that they resonates within them. And it's for that person today that got it today. I love you. I know you don't make a lot of noise in the background, and I know you take things personal, and you might not ever get any credit, but I love you. Thanks for listening to me and Stephen today, because we both have one hope, that you make the shift, man. You go towards the good, yeah?
The big shift. Fair play. Nick, thank you.
Yeah, have a good day, man.
Make sure to subscribe, like, go into stephengillen.com and sign up for more wonderful content to expedite, help, and support you on your own personal journey of success.